And we're back. Welcome to this week's show of Weighted Donuts. I'm Wayne Unger. I am a co-host, but my co-host could not make it tonight. His name is Craig Spear, and he is doing his fatherly duties of picking up his daughter from a university down south and bringing her back home. So it's just going to be myself and my guest tonight. I have Vinnie Richichi, also known in parts as New York Vinnie, and I'm happy to have him here on the show. Welcome, Vinnie. How are you tonight?
I'm good, Wayne. Good to be with you, man. This is in the millions of years that we've known each other, I never thought we'd be doing a radio show together. So this is kind of cool.
This is very true. I'm going to give everybody a quick background because I don't want to bore you. I met Vinnie in the 8th grade. We went to speech class. So everybody that had, some kind of speech impediment, I had a list. Once a week for about 45 minutes, we would go to this little room somewhere with a few other kids, and we had speech class. And over the years, in the neighborhood, Vinnie and I bumped into each other here and there, and we met at different times. And until I reconnected with you recently, the last time I saw you would have been the late 70s at some female's apartment on 34th Avenue, and then we didn't reconnect till years later. So from what I know, you were a DJ in San Francisco. You were like a sports guy for TV or radio in Seattle. You did a daily show on The Fan in Pittsburgh for a year, among other things. So just bring us up to date a little bit and tell us, fill in a few blanks here and there, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I've done pregame and postgame for the Pirates and the Mariners. Mariners out in Seattle. I worked at their radio station for 12 years. Then I moved to Pittsburgh. I wanted to come back east for a while because I'd been out on the West Coast, and did pregame and postgame for the Pirates for almost 4 years actually, and then got caught up in the old radio budget cuts. Did also TV stuff, TV pregame, did Seahawks, did Sonics, I like to talk sports, and I've managed over the past 20 or so years to get paid for doing it. I got the greatest job in the world. I get paid to be me. So it's a good gig. I like it. I'm getting into doing podcasting now a little bit, and I'll probably at some point pretty soon make an announcement about my next big move.
Excellent. And also, Vinnie is also, I consider Vinnie a connoisseur of music, and I know for sure he is a car guy. So, which brings us here tonight. We're gonna link up baseball or baseball players and music and cars. We're going to talk about baseball players that, professional musicians in bands, soloists. We're going to talk about some baseball players with some pretty extensive and pretty impressive car collections, and who knows where else we'll drift off to into the baseball world. So I tell you what, let's start with music first. Who's your favorite baseball player and musician?
Wow, my favorite baseball player musician. That's an interesting one because there are several baseball players that do several different things. There's guys that play guitar, guys that play horns, guys that sing. So I guess there's it's hard to pick one out. I'll give you a couple of different categories. I think there's probably no better baseball record than Mickey Mantle and Teresa Brewer doing Hey Mickey. You know, I mean, you know, the man sings, they got Mickey Mantle singing on the record with Teresa Brewer. So probably as a vocalist, maybe Mickey gets my nod. As a musician, the former center fielder of, again, when your New York Yankees, Bernie Williams.
I knew he was going to get a mention.
Yeah, is an accomplished musician. Has had several albums out. I did a great interview with him a few years ago. Great guitarist. And just does a fantastic job in kind of, you know, the new age jazz world, jazz guitar, but he does a nice job. I've actually seen him in concert, and he's really a prolific musician, you know, an accomplished musician. So, you know, again, we go with a couple of the Yankees as a team. I think the 1969 New York Mets, with their album, The Amazing Mets, have you ever heard anything better? I mean, Tom Seaver and Gary Gentry. And there's also a guy who, it's been done by one person in the history of baseball and music. But there has been one guy who has been in the top 10 in batting average, in the top 10 of the R&B charts at the same time.
Ooh.
And his name was Arthur Lee May, or as Braves fans know him as Lee May, who had a hit in the late 50s with Ooba Dooba Roo, and was also in that same time period in 1958 in the top 10 in batting in the National League, the year of 1958, the year that the Milwaukee Braves won the pennant.
Wow. I mean, I know of Lee May. I never knew that about him. Now there were two Lee Mays, right?
Right. This was the Arthur Lee May. This is the one that spelled his
right.
last name with the E on the end.
With an E. Right, with an E. Okay.
Lemay, and then there was Lee May, Maye. This is the Lee May, May. Played for the Braves. I'm trying to think. I think the Astros.
Possibly the White Sox. I could be wrong.
Well, I think he might have spent some time with the White Sox, but he's the only one to ever accomplish that feat, and not many people know about it. To be honest, you know, it's one of those things that you know, I mean, unless you were around back then. But he actually had a group called Arthur Lee May and the Crowns, and they were back on the I want to say the OK label out of Memphis. And
I'm willing to bet that you're going to send a lot of people to YouTube to look for that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on YouTube, but it's probably on YouTube. As a matter of fact, I think I put a copy of it on YouTube. So, I mean, the great thing with baseball music is that, you know, there's so many different genres, so many different ways that it's attacked. It's attacked by players who play. It's stuff that people have written about the game of baseball. It's stuff that has been written about baseball players. I have probably about 1,000 songs in my collection, baseball songs, what I would consider baseball songs. So when you think of, you know, Just Take Me Out to the Ball Game, it goes, excuse me, way beyond that. Matter of fact, remember the Pina Colada song?
Sure.
You know, if you like Pina Colada. Well, on that album, Rupert Holmes wrote a song about picking up a girl at a Mets game.
You know, I think I once read something about that. And then, of course, if we're talking about non-baseball players, you're talking about songs about baseball. John Fogerty, center field. That might be the best.
Probably, besides Take Me Out to the Ball Game, probably the most well-known baseball song. Probably the one that people think of, the most.
Yeah.
Was it,
My
1980, was it 81? Something like that, I guess. And, he titled this album that, and then a lot of baseball teams started using it. And it was great for Major League Baseball. It gave them something that wasn't so obscure. But I mean, a lot of these songs are obscure. There's not a lot of them that have been mainstream hits.
It also gave them something to connect with younger people. I'm talking about John Fogerty. I said, John Fogerty's song Center Field also gave them something to connect with younger people.
Right. He came. And, over the years, I've interviewed baseball players and musicians, and I've asked them, in regards to the topic, what's the common thing? And Huey Lewis told me, I had a great conversation once with Huey Lewis, who told me that it's the crowd. The baseball players, they love to be that focused. There's, hitting a home run is akin to ripping off a great guitar solo or something like that. There's that same crowd adoration. There's that same need to have that, that focus from an entire stadium full of people. If you are, if you're a great baseball player, you want that focus when you're at the plate, right?
Absolutely. Of course. So I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Stan Musial and his harmonica. I've actually seen a few videos of him playing the harmonica. He was actually, he wasn't like our he wasn't our blues harpist, but I'll bet he was capable. But he was able to pop off any song. He actually really knew his music with that harmonica.
Oh yeah,
it was amazing.
He was an accomplished harmonica player. Very proud of being a harmonica player. In his later years, he liked doing it when he was on it. It was something. Back in the old days, guys didn't just go to their room and watch TV. There was no TV to watch. So they picked up instruments. So they picked up different, there was a number of ball players that played things like ukulele, something that you could take on the road. So
right.
They played ukuleles, played guitars. Stan got really good at it. And I talked to him, I don't know, about 7 or 8 years ago, and had a great conversation with him about it. He loved it. He loved to play it. He wasn't bashful about playing it. He had a website. I think the website is still up, even though he's gone. And I actually went down and talked to him in Denora, Pennsylvania, which is where he and Ken Griffey Jr. are both from. Small town, about, 4,000 or 5,000 people in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Wow. So that it was like right by the borderline of Ohio.
Yeah, just north of West Virginia, Ohio. Right down, it's right on.
Okay, because I believe Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey Sr., I believe, was from Ohio. But I'm not positive.
Well, Senior grew up in Denora, and then Junior, I guess they went back there. Junior Lisette, and as a matter of fact, both Stan Musial has, of course, the records with the music with the harmonica. Ken Griffey Jr. appeared on 2 hip hop records in the middle 90s. Both of them extremely bad.
Well, I guess it's a balancing act. You know, his hip hop records were bad, and 50 Cent couldn't throw couldn't throw out the first pitch and make home plate. So it's all balanced out.
He doesn't get paid for making records. He gets paid for hitting balls. But going back to to mention the Yankees. I don't know if you remember back in what was it? The 80. Boy, I'm going to say 85. The Mets did a rap record called "Get Mesmerized," and it had the rapping styles of guys like Tim Tuckle, Lenny Dykstra, George Foster,
oh God,
Al Strawberry, and Dwight Gooden.
And out of those five, I think Lenny Dykstra might, just based on, impression, I would think Lenny Dykstra probably had the best rapping style of the five.
He may have, what, he probably did better than, but that, again, another, for some reason, and again, I think it goes back to the whole crowd thing, but for some reason, a lot of baseball players, think they can perform, they can hold their own in the musical arena. And some can. There's been a couple of guys. You remember Jack McDowell?
Oh, of course, yes. He had a band. Of course.
Yeah, he had a band named Pulley. Was a got a little punk band, and they were actually pretty good. I saw them a couple of times, and I got a couple of their albums, and they were actually, for what they were pretty good. He'd go out on the road and tour with them. And then Scott Spezio also had a band. Boy, I'm never going to remember the name of his band, but it was like Barking Frog or Dead Lily or something like that, a punk band. So, depending on the different, depending on the different genres of music, you have some interesting stuff. And again, there's no like one type of music across the board, but I think even Babe Ruth made a couple of records.
Wow.
What did he do? When he was in the 30s, he did a tour, and I think he made one or two records on the tour.
Interesting. So, but I mean, you would have to say that Bernie Williams is probably the most accomplished baseball player / musician.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's one that I could. I would. I would probably say, and I'm thinking off the top of my head. I would probably say that Bernie Williams, out of again, Stan Musial with the harmonica was pretty good.
He was good. I tell you though, I mean,
probably sold more records.
Bernie Williams. I'm into. I like flamenco guitar, and Bernie Williams does such a nice. It's like a fusion kind of thing. He does that Spanish guitar mixed in with that modern jazz. You get the guitar with just enough horn and percussion. It's just, I tell you what, he's got a nice sound. He's got a nice sound.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned Spanish because, interestingly enough, there have been a number of Spanish players who have
Jose Lima.
that sung.
Yeah,
And
Jose Lima.
Jose
Remember,
Lima.
well,
Jose Lima. La Lima.
Yeah.
Had I think 2 or 3 records, and had a pretty good career.
He did.
Also, El Duque had, I think, issued 2 or 3 albums, and had a pretty good voice. I mean, had a really a nice, it's a salsa, it's salsa. But it's really good. For what it is, for that type of music, it's really good.
Oh, I see. I tell you, I like salsa. Not so much the vocals. It's not that I don't like the vocals, but I love the percussion and I love the horns. Particularly the horns. I love the horns.
Yeah.
So you and I both. Our music is, our taste all over the place. So.
Well, it's interesting. The El Duque stuff. I'm friends with a guy, Miles Kahn, whose father used to own Fania Records, which was the big salsa label in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And he heard the El Duque stuff. He heard me play it once, and he thought it was great stuff. He was shocked that El Duque could deliver, but the arrangements were good, the instrumentation was good, everything was top notch, and it's funny. I mean, like I say, over the years, and now we're just talking about players themselves. I mean, we can get into songs about the game, but there have been a number of players that have gotten together. I guess there was a great tribute album to Roberto Clemente that was done about 5 or 6 years ago, and it has a ton of Hispanic players on it. They got into a studio down in Puerto Rico, and it's almost like the We Are the World of the Spanish baseball world. And they did it as because they wanted to, contribute something to the Roberto Clemente Foundation. So I know like Pudge Rodriguez is on there. Rafael Palmeiro, I think, is on there. I think Alex Rodriguez might be on there. Why is his name so? Oh, you know who else is on there? Another Yankee. Louis Soho.
Robinson Cano. Oh, Louis Soho. I was about to say, I think, Robinson Cano did not do something with music. I'm mixing him up with something else. Louis Soho.
City's management company. Did Cano issue a record too? It might have passed me by.
Wow. Louis Soho was one of my favorite Yankees back in the day. He was,
obviously you always spent time with the Mariners too.
Yeah, we used to look at him on the TV and we'd say, like, we can hang out on the corner with that guy. Look at him. Like, he would just look like one of us. But you know what? His final numbers didn't show it, but he was so clutch. He was like, you couldn't help watching him. You just couldn't help, but like him. And that's what made the Yankees. I mean, they had their stars, but that's what made the Yankees from 96 to 2001 so great, is they had their stars, but they did have, they had the Soho, they had the Charlie Hayes, the Scott Brocious, the Shane Spencer, the Chad Curtis. They had these guys, besides the stars, they filled it in. And their demise, and this is nothing against Alex Rodriguez, but their demise was when they made that trade. They traded for A-Rod, and basically they were trying to put together a rotisserie team instead of a Major League Baseball team. And how was it? The parts did not equal the sum, as opposed to the sum not equaling the parts. So
that's why those teams were so good. There were a lot of homegrown players. There were a lot of pieces that they had. You had a solid captain. A guy who was anchoring the middle infield in Jeter, who had ascended to stardom quite yet by the time 2000 rolled around yet. But and he established himself as the guy you had to answer to on that team. And it was, you had Tino Martinez, which was another, great player for them, great acquisition. Nelly, holding down the bullpen. You're right. You're exactly right. They had a team that wasn't just a team that was bought, but was traded for. And instead of going for a big picture of a rotisserie league, they went out and they got players that filled the needs that could beat teams in their division.
Yep, exactly. I mean, it was.
They were built to beat the Red Sox. They were built to beat, the Tigers. They were built to beat the teams that at that time were in their division.
And they were built for the playoffs. With the starting pitching, their bullpen, listen, they had the closer, they had Nelson and Stanton as setup guys. They had, what was his name? The guy in the bullpen with the rubber arm. Oh my God, I can't remember who it was. No. Guterman he was a left. They had a guy that can go 1 inning or 4 innings. Oh man. It is killing me, and I'm probably going to cheat and look it up, So.
Yeah,
but
it was and again, when you go back to 2000, they brought in one piece, David Justice. You go back to 2001, they bring in that one piece that they always seem to be able to.
And they traded David Justice for Robin Ventura.
Right.
And he was great. Yeah. It's true.
It was like it's like now it's not to that degree yet, but if you look at what the Pirates have done over the past couple of years. How they've improved themselves. They've kind of modeled it on that a little bit. Now, again, they're not trading for great talent, but they're going out and they're finding the right piece. It's what the Royals did. They had their homegrown guys, and then they added the right piece at the right time, which is how you have to do it if you're a small budget team. The Yankees really operate much more now, I think, like a small budget team than they do, the way they did in the early 90s when the old man was alive.
Well, you know what? I mean, they realized, what they did. Oh, by the way, the pitcher I'm thinking of was Ramiro Mendoza. And, but the Yankees, I think part of that whole rotisserie thinking, I think a lot of it had to do with what their business model was. I think they felt as though they were compelled to put these stars out there. And they felt compelled to generate these revenues, and it might have also been part of the strategy to be able to build a new stadium. And but that business, I think they started to see cracks in the business model, and except for a hiccup a couple of years ago when they went a little crazy when they signed Ellsbury and Beltran and McCann, I think, I think they've done Cashman's done a pretty good job of turning the financial model around. But the problem is a lot of Yankee fans they jumped on the bandwagon. Okay, I mean, I have friends I can remember in the early 90s seeing them wearing Met jackets. You know, they were Met fans, and by 96, 97, they were all of a sudden they were lifelong Yankee fans.
Well, first those people.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. You know, that's how things have changed. And you know me. I know we know each other a long time. I've been a Met fan. I hate the Yankees. I can't stand them. You know, I will. You know, and I don't care if the Mets are doing good, doing bad, whatever. That's my team. You know, that's I stick with them. I mean, you know, listen, they're never going to be the Yankees. They're not the Yankees. The Yankees got a 70-year head start on them. So it's not going to be like that. But that's okay. To me, they don't have to be the Yankees. You know?
And you see, and it's funny, when I grew up, we loved both teams. You know, for me, like, I don't recall too many of my friends, like, you know, or if any of them, like, you know, from the park and stuff, hating, you know, the Met fans hating the Yankees or the Yankee fans hating the Mets. I mean, you know, well, back then we didn't have interleague play, but granted, like, you know, we rooted for both teams. I watched, you know, I was always, you know, I used to drive people crazy in my house. I'd drive my mother crazy. I kept getting up, change channel, you know, because back then we didn't have remotes. Yeah, so you had to get up, and I'd go back and forth between channel 9 and channel 11. That's how we had it back then. But I don't recall the Met-Yankee hatred really developing till around the mid-'80s. That's just, you know, my perception.
I remember it a lot earlier than that, you know. Almost like a cat, you know, a cat. It was interesting. I always thought it developed, or I noticed it developed, you know, in the late 60s when the you know, Mets got good all of a sudden. And the Yankees were pretty bad. You know, in the old Horace Clark days.
But like I say, me personally, I never viewed it as that. I mean, what the Mets did that year was great, and I'll never forget. I was in Chicago that year in '69. I mean, I actually, you know, shame on me. I ran away from home, and you know, 1969. It was in May of '69. I'm born in November, so I wasn't even 15 yet. And so the Cubs were off to that great start. And, you know, like an optimistic fan, I mean, I was an optimistic New York fan. I said, don't worry. I said, the Mets are going to win it. The Mets are going to do it this year. And, you know what, realistically on paper, if you looked at it, it was like, no, you know, I mean, you know, today I never would have said something like that. I would have hoped, but I never would have said something like that. Well, I mean, but what they did was amazing. And it's funny. We had Ron Swoboda on a few months ago, and this is when I was doing the show with Ralph Tycho, and Ralph made mention to Ron that Frank Robinson, before the World Series, somebody had mentioned something about certain players and said something like Rod Gasper. And Frank Robinson was quoted as saying, who the heck is Rod Gasper? And Ralph mentioned this to Ron, and Ron actually, he gave a great answer. He said, well, you know what? He was 100% right to react like that. He said, on paper, we didn't belong on the field with them. He goes, you know, you know, it really was. It was an amazing team. Gil Hodges was, you know, everybody was. I only wish to see what he could have done through the years as a manager, because he was a great manager. He was a great manager.
Yeah, I think he would have been. Well, you know, to be fair, though, with that pitching staff, you would have been a good manager.
Well, but you know what? But the way he managed, the platoons with Shamsky and Swoboda.
Right. Well, he took that piece out of Casey's book. He took that piece out of Casey's book where he used the platoon system. He knew who to put in certain situations. Before computers and all of that stuff, he knew. He knew where.
And to me, like, and the shoe polish, just unbelievable. The shoe polish was unbelievable. So, and you know what? Him being such a good manager is quite possibly the reason why he is not in the Hall of Fame. There was, Ted Williams was the head of the Veterans Committee. And Ted Williams was not happy that Gil Hodges took that same Texas Rangers team and did so well with them. And Earl Weaver was also on that Veterans Committee, and Earl Weaver was really, like, outmanaged in that series. And it's been reported many, many times. I mean, when this was mentioned to me, I was like, God, nah, you're making this up. I did some digging, and I have to say it seems like there's a lot of fact to the animosity of Earl Weaver and Ted Williams that kept Gil Hodges out of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's a shame because I believe that Hodges belongs in the Hall of Fame. Listen, he was the predominant player, or one of the, not to be, but he was one of the predominant players at his position over his era.
Yes.
To me, is the qualification for the Hall of Fame. If you are one of the top 2 or 3 players, maybe I'll go 4 deep with expansion. But if you're one of the top 2 or 3 players in your era, which I always consider to be 7 or 8 years.
Right. I'm like it. Yeah, I'm like it 8 to 10, but I'm with you. We're pretty close.
Yeah. If you have that longevity, you can be at the top of your game for that long. And be among the leaders, elite leaders in elite categories. You should be in the Hall of Fame. It's like the 2 people who didn't vote for Ken Griffey Jr. How do you not vote for Ken Griffey Jr. to go to the Hall of Fame? The voting should be with the writers. Because the writers grudges.
I mean, think about it. Okay, there were guys that did not vote for Henry Aaron or Mickey Mantle. No one has ever gotten 100% of the vote. That is absolutely.
Henry Aaron, I understand because it was still in that era where there were guys who just didn't like black ball players. That there were guys who wouldn't have voted for Henry Aaron purely because he was black. No other reason.
Well, what about how do you explain a Mickey Mantle? How do you explain a Tom Seaver? That's it.
Exactly. How do you explain Tom Seaver not getting into the Hall of Fame? What do you call it? Not getting
100% of the vote.
Either belongs or he doesn't belong. One or the other, right?
Listen, you know what? There are probably guys who you can debate and you can waver on. But Tom Seaver was not one of them. And there's a pretty long list actually of guys who it's a slam dunk. You just and take the racist angle out of it. Let's just go with white ball players, okay? I mean, it's just when you think about it, like how could they not be in the Hall of Fame? Or I'm sorry, how could they not get 100% of the vote? So I think it's time actually for. I know they've taken some steps the past couple of years and have revoked credentials of guys who are no longer active in baseball writing, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's time, though, also to recognize some of the great internet columnists, and give them credentials.
Broadcasters and internet, electronic media should have a say, a vote in the Hall of Fame. It's volunteer because electronic media, the guys that write, the beat writers for different teams that are writing on MLB.com, the broadcasters for teams, on a rotating basis, some of those guys should get votes. If you've been broadcasting for Major League Baseball for 10 years, you should get a vote. You see all these guys on an everyday basis.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So
it's a travesty to me, but we could talk for 5 hours on that.
I know.
I know it's going to come up anyway. So, the whole Rose thing, whether he should be in, he shouldn't be in. That's.
So listen, let's go to baseball players and cars, okay? So, and let's take Reggie Jackson out of the equation. And Reggie Jackson, I believe, probably has taste probably the most in cars, the most similar to you and I. He loves the American muscle car.
And unfortunately, Reggie lost a lot of his collection.
I know. Yes.
Yeah. Reggie lost in a fire at Berkeley in the middle, I guess, the middle '80s. He lost. He had some rare deep American stuff. He might have the first C28 Camaro, the first '68 C28 Camaro. There's a lot of guys. You get some coin, and especially if you're young and you're single, you don't have a family yet. There's a lot of these guys that go out and start collecting cars. Griffey Jr. had a bunch of nice cars. He would always show up. He had a Bentley. I think he had 2 or 3 Bentleys. And it was funny because he got a Bentley, and 2 days later, this is when they were both on stage, Alex shows up in a Ferrari. So they're like,
the Ferrari seems to be the number one exotic choice. The Ferrari Lamborghini type, that seems to be, the choice. Of course, if you're Justin Verlander, you get one of each. So, but,
the most interesting Ferrari I ever saw belonged to Jason Giambi. When he was in Oakland, he got his first bonus check with Oakland when he came up with Oakland. And he went out and he bought a purple Ferrari. And you could miss this car coming down the street in Oakland. I mean, it looked like Tim Daddy got it. And he come down, the long hair flying all over the place. And he's got the music, rock and roll music coming out of it. He pulled into the parking lot. And it was funny. And I know he's had a bunch, Giambi had a bunch of Ferraris. But actually, a lot of the players now over the past probably 10 years are doing pickup trucks. They're going to have like either Hennessy or Celine or one of these companies go out and buy these, these custom pickup trucks. I know, I'm trying to think now who I started had a beautiful pickup truck. It was worth like $125,000. With the motor redone by Hennessy, like a 700 horsepower motor. But that seems to be a lot of what these guys are driving. They like to take, I don't know why,
Well, I mean, it makes sense. Most of them are big guys. I mean, listen, CC Sabathia, he has a Ferrari. And I'm thinking, like, how the hell does he get in it? I mean, I tell you, because I was, like, looking around earlier, another guy who thinks like me, and probably like you, Brian Wilson. He's got a Ford police cruiser. He's got a '64 Coupe de Ville, and he's got I wouldn't call it pimped out because it's really dark, but he's got a Chevy Avalanche, and the beautiful thing is, and he's got a little scooter, it's like that, he's got taste like me, like make it fun, make it, I don't want to, like, I don't know if. I don't know if I'd be comfortable in a car that nice. I'd be afraid to move. I'd be afraid to get something dirty. Who knows? I'd be afraid to sneeze in the car. So that's just me.
He's got money to buy it,
but
if it gets chopped up too much.
Yeah, it's funny though. Like back in the day, they used to say, singles hitters drive Chevys and home run hitters drive Cadillacs. So, you know what? Even Eric Ivar has a nice little car collection. So, I guess there's enough money in baseball for all of them to splurge.
Well, I remember Ichiro when he first came over. First, he had a Nissan, like the QX80, like a big SUV, and he traded that in after a week for a Galanta wagon, like the big Mercedes-Benz SUV.
Right.
Like
yes.
$140,000. Well, no, he had $160,000 one. He had the custom AMG version with 21-inch wheels and everything. Oh man, it was something, man. And he always would show up with some interesting cars.
Like Cespedes did in spring training.
He's a real car guy too.
So, and what did you think of Cespedes' cars, or I should say vehicles? Because I think he showed up with a Polaris also. I said Yoenis Cespedes. Did you see some of the cars that he showed up with in spring training?
No.
Oh, I believe he had the Polaris, the 3-wheel motorcycle. He was coming in with something every day. And then I think one day, actually, just to get a rise, he actually came in on horseback. So.
See that? Well, the interesting thing about him, obviously, is that, being Cuban, it's interesting for him to go back and see these cars from the 50s because that's what all they have down there.
I know.
He's looking at a nice 55 Chevy or something like that, or 57 Chevy. They got 55, 56, 57 Chevys, but they're all put together with baling wire. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah, no, he didn't come up with anything. He didn't come up with any Chevys. I'm trying to think. What did he? He had. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna find it. It's bugging me now. But I know he also came up with a tricked out Jeep as well. So let's see.
You know
He had the motorcycle. He had a tricked out Jeep, a truck. Yeah, I mean, you know, let's see. He had a car that I never even heard of. A Modai?
A what?
Oh. What was this car? A model trigger. Gee, I don't know what this is. This is a nice looking car though, I gotta say. You know, and it's funny. Is like the way we grew up with cars, I'm not into cars anymore. I'm just, it's just, I'm gonna find that other car if I can. But, so Vinny, we're running out of time. And I know you're driving on the road. So are you close to Pittsburgh yet?
No, I'm going to Harrisburg.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, it's
beautiful Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Everybody should visit it once.
Well, you know what? When I go to Hershey Park, I stay in a couple of towns over. I stay in Mechanicsburg.
Yeah, that's right. Have you ever been to the car museum in Hershey?
No, I didn't. When I was in Hershey, I was with my kids, and so car museums weren't going to do it for them.
But you got to get these kids going, man. You know, the one thing about cars, I'm running out of time, but the one thing about cars that is interesting is to always see the order of status in a baseball clubhouse according to, because baseball is such a game where you don't want to show off. That there are guys who intentionally don't buy really nice cars for the first couple of years they're with the ball club.
And then as they're more and as they're established, they probably wind down. I'll never forget. I saw Randy Johnson. They caught him pulling into the parking lot. I can't remember if he was with the Yankees yet. I think he was. And the cameras and the reporters were grabbing him as he was driving into the lot, and he was driving a minivan. And I just thought that was great. He was Randy Johnson. And this is when he was a star, was driving a minivan. I thought that was awesome.
Randy's a muscle car guy. Randy likes to race, as a matter of fact. Randy he does a lot of photography now, and one of the favorite things he loves to do is go out and shoot races. And if you go to his website, he's got a ton of really incredible racing photographs. I think it's rj51.com or something like that. But Google him, and he posts a lot of really, really good, racing photographs for some of the events that he goes to.
You're going to have a lot of people Googling a lot of stuff. You're going to have them looking up, you're going to have them looking up Lee May. You're going to have them checking out Randy Johnson. All the way down the line.
Have them check out my website too at NewYorkCity.com.
All right, wait. Say it again. What is your website?
NewYorkCity.com.
And okay, so it's New York, the whole two words, New York, and Vinnie, it's VINNIE, correct?
Right. .com.
.com. Okay.
Right.
New York, Vinnie, VINNIE. Okay.
Which is
NewYorkVinnie.
DriveTimeRadio.com.
okay, or drivetimeradio.com. You will hear Vinnie is the car man. He is the car man. That's all I can tell you with. It hasn't left him. So, Vinnie, thank you very much for taking the time during your drive to be on tonight. I really appreciate it.
It's just been great, man.
And
it's been good to hang with you. It's good to be on the show. Thanks a lot for having me, Wayne.
Thank you, Vinnie, and hopefully I'll see you in the neighborhood here next week.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you all when I get back up.
All right. Okay. Thank you, and good night, everybody.
All right, brother.